Hey, if you've ever wanted to start a fly fishing business, here are some things that you may want to know. We're going to go over our top 5 tips.
That's a big brown.
We are doing a little different format here. I've got Spencer Higa, a.k.a. Spence. He's been around a while, and we've been talking about this topic for either a video or a podcast for a little bit and figured we'd make a go with it. So what you're going to get out of this is if you've ever thought about either getting into the fly fishing industry, starting a business related to fly fishing, and this really applies to any sort of business, but we're going to go over some tips, some pitfalls, a lot of stuff that I think people don't consider when they're looking at starting or a business or getting into the fly fishing world. So we'll go over more of those kind of key points at the end, towards the end of the video. But we do want to set the stage first by doing a brief introduction. So Spencer here has worked with this for a couple of years. And before that, you may remember him from such movies as, from such businesses as Tacky Fly Fishing. So Spence, why don't you just give you've been in the industry for about 100 years.
Close to 100, yeah.
So maybe give us a little bit of your resume here.
Okay, so I got into the fly fishing industry in about 1996. I started working at Falcon's Ledge, which is a fly fishing lodge in northeastern Utah. Started out guiding and then kind of worked my way into management and then some other things. But so I started out in my 20s at the fly fishing lodge, learned a lot there. Guiding was awesome. I'd always wanted to guide, so that was just a great place to start. So I did that until we started Tacky Fly Fishing in 2014. And I was still working at the fly fishing lodge at that time because Tacky was just supposed to be kind of a little side business and just a little bit of extra income. It actually turned into something a little bit more. So when we started Tacky,
Which, let me interrupt.
Oh.
It's a good interruption.
Oh, okay.
The conversation of, is it a side gig or is it a full-time gig?
Yes.
We're going to circle back to that because I think that is a killer for people that don't consider that early enough. Anyway, go on.
So in 2014 started Tacky Fly Fishing with a few friends. And so I was doing both at the same time. I was doing all the marketing for Tacky Fly Fishing, guiding, doing marketing and managing at Falcon's Ledge. So it was kind of my plate was full. I actually never slept for about 5 years.
So. Okay.
You know how that
sounds
is.
Sounds about right.
So so I've been in the industry quite a while, and it's been a lot of fun. Met a lot of really cool people. I met you guys, obviously through fly fishing, and some of my best friends have been through fly fishing. So
yeah, same with me. I wouldn't have any friends if it weren't for that, except my wife. She's a good friend, but. At least I scored one good person outside of the industry.
There you go. Well, Cheech. What about Cheech?
Well, Cheech was fly fishing.
Okay.
From the beginning. My kids, they're good friends, but they're sort of in the industry by default. Anyway, so Spence has a long history of being in the industry. So you've seen companies come and go. You've experienced firsthand. What does it take to run a business, grow a business, kind of that sort of thing.
Yeah.
My background's a little different. So I graduated from college as an engineer, and I designed jumbo jets, fuselage at Boeing. So that's what I did with my engineering degree. I made sure these airplanes stayed together, specifically the fuselage of the 777. And then I worked on some other stuff there. I eventually migrated more of my work into kind of IT related stuff with the engineering. And from there, parlayed that into a job at a software company that it's called ERP, Enterprise Resource Planning. And so that's where I got my most of my business experience and exposure was from that, where we would go into companies that were looking to implement a software system, because a lot in those days, early 2000s, late 90s, were looking to grow their business with software. And so that was kind of the first few versions of Windows-based software. So anyway, the reason I bring that up is because once I got into that, I was doing consulting for companies that wanted to, let's say, automate their warehouse so that their picking guys could go and pick accurately or efficiently. Or when they were manufacturing, they would manufacture things, keep track of their inventory, pay their bills on time, get paid money on time. So kind of all aspects of a business from soup to nuts. And so I was really kind of a jack of all trades consultant. And so I did business consulting with a little bit more emphasis on IT. But so I was the one that would go in and help them do, things that sound as dumb as like printing barcode labels or something that, were foreign to a lot of people.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I did that for a lot of years. Most of that time was spent with the software company called SAP, which is one of the larger enterprise business management software packages in the world. I worked with 2 different versions of that, mostly for small businesses. So a lot of the businesses that we worked with were startups. A lot of them were manufacturer distributor kind of things. So in the fly fishing world, I actually worked with a few. Hi, Zeppelin.
Zeppelin
The dog has come to visit here. Bro, get off. Give me some space. Hey, we're talking about grown-up stuff. Yeah, so anyway, so I did have a number of clients that were in. Dude, what did I just tell you? Back
He
off,
wants to be
bro.
part of this podcast.
Okay. Sit down. Okay. Yeah, so I had some experience with outdoor industry, so manufacturers, distributors, a couple of retailers here and there. So yeah, and then so I did that up until and beyond when we started Fly Fish Food. And so that's just to give everybody kind of background. We're have some experience with it. As part of that, when I would do, our company would recruit business consultants, IT engineers, that sort of thing. I would go and do seminars with college students because I would come and do these seminars for like, what's it like in the real world when you're a business management major or an accounting major? And so I'd help the students understand what, day one of your job, what are you going to do?
Yeah.
Most likely you're going to sit behind a computer and crunch numbers or do stuff like that. So anyway, but the thing that got me thinking about this is I do remember in those seminar days, people would say, I'd always ask the question, business management guys especially, hey, what do you want to do in 5 years? And like clockwork, literally every one of them, I want to start my own business. And so, the reality is not everybody's going to start their own business, and it's not probably everybody's cup of tea. But that's what we're talking about today. So, Spencer, why don't you start off by giving us like just a high-level history of Tacky? Like, how did it start? What was the dynamics of that?
Yeah, so Tacky started with, Tim and Kai were the founders of the company. They're research scientists up at the University of Utah, and they would go into their lab and they'd have pieces of silicone laying around for, I don't know what they were using it for, but in their minds, they're always thinking fly fishing because they love to fly fish. Tim was a guide with me at Falcon's Ledge. And one day they took some flies in, they just started messing around with it, sticking flies in the silicone, and it's like, hey, this might be a good idea for a fly box, because one of the problems we ran into as guides, I mean, we're on the water every single day. We're putting flies in and out of the silicone or the foam, and after a while, the foam would stretch out over time, and especially if you're a guide, you're on the water a lot. Flies would just fall out, and so in their minds, they thought, okay, well, this is going to solve a problem.
Yeah.
And so they came up with a few boxes, just very, very early stages of Tacky. Came to me and asked me, if I wanted to be a part of it, I could do the marketing and then help with the research and development and some ideas for boxes. And so we went through about 3 or 4 different iterations and samples until we found one that worked. And so, yeah, that's really how it started. It was really, we were just doing something on the side to make a little extra money, and then it just turned into something a lot bigger.
Yeah. So what would you say from the time that you had the idea or that the idea was had until you were actually making cash flow? What would you say?
Oh man, so we did a Kickstarter campaign. We got funded. That helped us pay for tooling and everything we needed to get started,
Yeah.
and our first run of original boxes. I would say from start till, well, probably a year,
Yeah.
which is pretty good. We thought it was going to be a little bit
strong.
longer than that,
Yeah.
but it started out pretty strong, and so we were able to get some cash flow with just a little after that first year of starting.
Yeah. So the reason, obviously Spence works for us, but I think Tacky's a good example of something that took off really well, and it got, it was recognized as a cool product, a good, useful product, high quality product, did a good job with what it did. And you guys nailed the distribution. Like you were into, were you first doing direct to consumer?
No, we never
so
did
you defined
direct.
your channel right off the bat.
Yeah, so Orvis was our first customer.
Yeah, perfect.
Which helped.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's a good
Yeah.
point, right?
Yeah.
I think a lot of people, when they think, oh, okay, I'm gonna get into the fly fishing business, and here's my product, and I'm gonna start selling it. Well,
Yeah.
but you guys figured you would leverage an existing sales channel
Yep.
into, say, wholesalers that would then kind of share that margin with you before passing it on to
Exactly.
the
And
consumers.
jumping back to Orvis, it's really, really important to build relationships in this industry.
Yeah.
So the Falcon's Ledge was an Orvis endorsed lodge, and so we kind of had an in with Orvis already. They knew who we were. They came out and fished with us a lot. They loved us. So when this product came out and we took it to them, I still remember being in Bozeman, Montana, sitting in a hotel room or sitting in a hotel lobby with one of the guys, the buyer, and I'm not even kidding. 5 minutes we just explained the boxes in 5 minutes, and he says, "Okay, we'll get them."
Yeah,
I mean, it was that easy.
Yeah.
So it's super important to build and maintain relationships in this industry.
Yeah, I would echo that. I mean, we have, for me at least, one of the things that I love the most about living in this industry, in this world, is being able to work with and associate with our vendors, our customers, all the people that make up the industry, right? And having those relationships to us has been incredibly valuable. It's hard to, I never want to downplay that because it's a key thing.
Yeah.
So in other words, don't be a jerk. Play nice. There's a lot of
Play well with others.
there's a lot of background there. And I think from our standpoint, when Cheech and I started Fly Fish Food, just to give a brief history on that for those that haven't watched our other video where we talk about it, or videos, we had for a while, I'd been doing an article every week for the Salt Lake Tribune on a fly. It would be the fly of the week, and it would run in the non-ski season. So in ski season, I would get swapped out for somebody that was doing a skiing article, and this would run in the actual one back in the day when they had newspapers that would be delivered. And then so I would do this, and I got a lot of, hey, where'd you get this material, or how do you tie this, or whatever. And so that went on for a bit, and then one day I was just talking to Cheech. We'd fished together for years. We said, well, maybe it would be good to have a blog so that we could trap our crazy ideas and make the lists of recipes, so that if people wanted to tie this weird fly we used, that we pushed like a specific material and that. And so we actually just created a blog, and in the blog we would just make entries for fly recipes, and then we would pair it with a video. So we'd have a little tutorial video. And then what ultimately happened there was we'd get the same kind of thing where people are like, oh, where do I get this material? And at the time, there's sites like Jay Stockard and I think Cabela sold online at that time,
Yeah.
and there was a number of others, but not a ton that would like have everything that you wanted. So and if they did have it, or at least would sell it, but it wasn't in stock. So it was really difficult. And in my brain on the logistics side, I'm thinking, okay, out of all these hundreds of companies that I've helped start or run over the years, one of the very difficult things, at least we're talking small items and lots of them, it's tough to keep track of those things and reorder them, keep track of lead times and all that stuff that goes involved. Anyway, so we decided, hey, let's throw a little shopping cart up there and allow people to buy stuff. And we just literally bootstrapped it. And so we took some money, bought a bunch of materials for some specific flies, put them on the website, and you'd get an order every couple days. And I remember back in those days, we're like watching it, like, oh, it made it in a sale. And this is like 10 years ago, so it wasn't that long, but it was a while in internet age terms. And so we just kept doing that, and we did not take any pay or any sort of money out of the business for probably 6 years, maybe 6 years, 5-6 years.
Yeah.
We there's a few things where we, hey, this is a new fly rod or something, and we almost look at it as an investment. But so that's where that happened, and then it just kind of grew from there, and we just built it. And obviously, having the background I have, all of a sudden all these lights start going on. I'm like, all right, okay, hold on, we need to figure this out and make sure we're doing it right. And so, so I had the cheat sheet, of course, of how to scale a business and do things like I wanted. And so that's where we got started. Certainly is not something that would have happened overnight, but kind of like you were saying, where you guys had this idea, rolled with it, you made some good decisions, worked hard, and then, it came to fruition, and which is a tough thing, businesses.
Yeah, and when you're touching on when you first started, I remember buying stuff out of your garage.
Oh yeah.
So
if you were one of the lucky few.
So yeah, you look at your shop here, and you didn't start in this shop here. Same with Tacky. We started in our garage.
Yeah.
And one of the partners' garage, we kept all the inventory. That's where all the shipments went out of. And then we moved a step up from that. We moved into a basement of a bank. They just had some storage rooms down there. We started there, and then we then grew into an office space with a little bit of warehouse attached to it.
We started in my basement, in my office, where my fly tying office and computer stuff in there. And then we eventually took over the hallway. My wife had some old dresser drawers, and we had shelving, like pantry stuff downstairs. And we would literally get all the colors of marabou would go in one bag. All the colors of chenille in different types would go in another bag, and they would go in the drawer. So we were like, oh, here's the dresser drawer. There's socks? Nope, just a bunch of marabou. And that's how we did it. And we were up late at night. Cheech would come over, I don't know, however many times a week, couple times a week, 3 times a week, and we would pick orders, and because we were working our regular jobs, and we would pick orders till 1 or 2 in the morning. But it was so clunky because we were just pulling out of bags and stuff like that. But then we moved to my garage, which to me was like we hit it big.
And you guys, it wasn't just like boxes in a garage. It was so organized. He had a computer set up. Oh yeah. And he went and grabbed whatever I needed, went over there and made sure it was out of the. I mean, it was very organized.
Yeah. And that's where the nerd in me comes through, because I'd been consulting with companies for 20 some odd years at that point, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to eat my own dog food. In other words, I'm not going to make the same mistakes I see people making all of the time.
Yeah.
Trying to see if my...
It stop?
No, it's trying to go to sleep. Let's get this. Sorry,
Brig, you're going to have to edit this. Just more work for you, Brig. Could be worse though.
Okay, we'll just keep track of that one now. Yeah, so I didn't want to make some of the same mistakes I'd seen people make, so I figured, hey, I've got to do this right from day one. And the plan was, even though we were in my garage, everything was laid out as if it were a much bigger warehouse. We employed strategies and techniques from day one that if I were to look at then, I'd say, wow, you're literally trying to kill like a mourning dove with a 10 or 12 gauge shotgun or something, you know, where it's just like way overkill. But that's a key part, one of the things that we'll get to in a little bit. But anyway, so that's the background. We've now fly fish food. We went from my garage, which didn't last too long because we outgrew that pretty quick. We were in a super rapid growth mode there. Moved into, we were looking for a warehouse, went to a retail space, even though we didn't want a retail space. And that we outgrew that one in like a day. Literally,
I remember
it
that,
was
yeah.
so packed. And then, so we were there, 2.5 years, and then to this location, which is much bigger, one of the bigger fly shops around.
And you're outgrowing this space now.
Yeah, we are literally busting at the seams. We've taken over the next building over, which is our warehouse. We've got our location up in Idaho Falls, which is just retail, but everything logistically ships out of here, and that's where we are. And so that's why you're listening to us talk about nerdy business tips based on our experiences. But I would also say part of the reason behind this is we get approached by, I want to say almost every week, maybe not every week, but let's just say every month, by somebody that's got an idea. Whether it's, hey, I want to start a lodge, or we had a guy that emailed us recently that wanted to begin making fly fishing videos. And, figured, hey, Fly Fish Food makes fly fishing videos, so let's, see if what it would take. Products, we get tons of people coming to us with different product ideas, some really good ideas, some not great ideas, and which they've kind of labeled me as the dream killer, because I'm usually the one that fields these type of calls. And so sometimes, I'll be honest with people if I think it's not a good idea. I will tell you it's not a good idea, and I'll tell you why. Anyway, I try to be nice about it, but people don't like to hear that their baby is ugly. I don't know if you remember that Seinfeld episode where the dudes, that is one ugly baby. It's an ugly baby. Anyway.
No, but I think you have to be honest with them, because before they really dive into it, they need to know what they're getting themselves into.
Yeah. Well, I think of tacky too, because when I saw it, immediately, boom, lights went off. I knew, or the lights went on, and I saw your box. I just went to sleep. I said, "Wow, it's a good idea." Format, all things about it, which were really, really good. So, to me, that was a no-brainer. But there's other ones too. So, I think if we're talking to people that maybe want to start a business, and there's two things here. Let's differentiate. We were talking earlier. So if you want to be in the fly fishing industry, there's kind of two ways you can do it at a high level. You can either join a business that already exists, which is far more efficient, less risky, and it's realistic, far more realistic than starting your own. Because, to some extent, there's nothing new under the sun. I'm not saying to dissuade, but there's a lot of stuff's been done and redone. But yeah, if you want to get in the industry, go get a job. But we're not talking about that really. We're really talking about if you are more of an entrepreneur kind of mindset, what are these strategies that we would say? What are these 5 things that we're going to say, or we're going to talk about? But that's why this is going to be, we're already at 25 minutes, son.
Wow.
So this is going to probably be an hour. So for all of you people listening in podcast land, just sit back, get yourself a yerba mate or something like that,
A root beer.
or whatever beverage of your choice, and enjoy. This is gold. Like, this is the type of thing that I would pay. People would pay me $200 an hour for when I did consulting, or more. I didn't get all that money, but that would have been nice. So anyway, we're going to talk about the starting of the business aspect, and it could be, like we mentioned, it could be a product like Spencer did and the tacky guys. It could be like a guide. You want to get into the guide business, an outfitter. When we're saying product, we could mean manufacturer, distributor. It could be something you import. Doesn't mean it's something that you invent. But, people have come to us with a whole clothing lineup that's lifestyle. I'm just telling you guys right now, if your idea is lifestyle fly fishing clothing, I would rethink that. I'm just saying right now. That one has been beat to death 1,000 times over and failed 1,000 times over by, you name the company that are out there, and they litter the landscape of fly fishing. Anyway, I shouldn't be so mean, but probably not the choice I would choose there. But there's certainly other things that you could do. So with that in mind, we've come up with these 5 kind of main bullet points. And so the first one, and these are, I don't know if you were calling pointers or tips, but I'm going to also talk about landmines. And I think the landmines are the biggest thing that people ignore, because you don't typically want to think, oh, well, what's the downside to this, or what do I need to look out for? Most of the time it's like, oh, I've got this good idea. I'm gonna go be a guide, and I'm gonna go to guide school. I'm gonna do this, and you're kind of putting the cart before the horse, and you're not looking for the downsides of these things. So when you did tacky, so we're talking like at the very beginning, my number one thing at the high level, so bullet point number 1 here, is you need to do quite a bit of research and business planning before this even gets off the ground. I would say more often than not, when people come to me and say, hey, I've got this great idea, my first question is, where's your business plan? Okay, so what is your business idea? And so they may have an idea, but there's no plan or forethought, or as we were talking about, probably the biggest thing that we've seen is people trying to solve a problem that does not exist.
Yeah.
Like, hey, this is really cool. I'm going to build a backpack that will fit my cat so that my cat can come on my adventures. Bridget, this is not intended to reference. She won't even listen to this. She sometimes takes her cat with her. That just came to my mind. But I'm just saying, in general, if you're going to either invent or bring a product into the world, so many people are trying to do something to solve a problem that's just not there.
Yeah.
Like your issue, or tacky, what problem did you solve?
Well, we solved the problem of flies falling out of your fly box.
Yeah.
When you're guiding, you're out guiding, and wind picks up, you open your fly box, and they all go flying out. I had boxes that were 5, 6, 7 years old, and after that long, the foam just stretches out. It just doesn't hold as tight. So that was the one problem that we solved. And
so you identified this problem, you solved the problem, people bought it. That's a good deal.
Yeah.
So going along with that, and that's probably the biggest thing, because there are some products still on the market that I've seen that people will approach us again and, hey, will you buy the stuff? Because, as a retailer, we're one of the biggest fly fishing retailers on the planet. So we do get a lot of pitches from people saying, oh, hey, this is a cool product that we've already got it manufactured. It's ready to roll. And I look at it, I'm like, man, I don't have this problem, or whatever it is you're trying to solve. So I would say that's probably the number one issue, is really look critically at whether you're solving a problem or filling a vacancy that exists, as opposed to more lifestyle clothing from the fly fishing world that's imported from China on Alibaba. Oh no, I just gave away the secret to all people that want to get in the industry. No, I'm just joking. That's kind of how it works though, guys. If you want to bring in a product, Typically, you're going to go out of the country to have it made.
Yep.
And if you're going to have it made somewhere else, chances are it's a duplicate of something that's already existing. But anyway, so be aware of like where your product or your service fits. Now, we're really not going to talk so much about, say, guiding, although the same kind of principles would apply. Obviously, guiding, there's a problem there. People want somebody to go fishing or take them fishing. You're filling that. So you kind of have to use your imagination on how some of these can apply to you. One that would come up that I just mentioned earlier is people that want to make money making films, like fly fishing films, which is so cool. When the Trout Bum Diaries that came out?
Trout Bum Diaries. They're one of the first ones to come out with movies.
I would say they were kind of the first wave of that style. We even got like our buddy Brian Gregson and Cheech and some other guys that were that we wanted to do that and thought it would be super cool. And we spent a lot of time, and a lot of money.
It's a lot of work.
And it's a lot of work. Ton of work.
Yeah.
And I don't think it ever really crossed my mind, am I going to make my money back on this? I think I was probably at the time thinking, well, if we get somebody to sponsor us, we can get some free gear. And we did get a little free gear. But anyway, that kind of goes back to that same thing in the business planning world. So that first step, if you are not planning, like how are you going to make money? Like if you're in it to not make money, do whatever you want, right? I mean, if you've got unlimited supply of money, like a lot of people do apparently, to just dump a bunch of money on something, whether it works or not, okay, it's probably not the best podcast for you. But I would say that as you start your business plan, there's a lot of other thought processes that go into play. They're coming to play there. Like, what's your addressable market? Like, let's say this is a product. What percent of the fly fishing market would your product potentially be offered to? And with tacky, you could almost say 100% of the market because everybody uses fly boxes, right?
Yeah, I mean, fly boxes were. I mean, some of the shops would mention to us they hadn't sold that many fly boxes since they'd been in business.
Yeah, which is really cool.
Because fly boxes was just, oh, here's another fly box or whatever. But then once people actually, in fact, we got emails from people in Montana saying, hey, we want to buy these boxes, but none of the shops up here carry them. I got in my car that next weekend and I drove up to Montana. Yeah. I hit every shop in West Yellowstone as on my way up to Bozeman and hit every single shop, left them samples, and within 3 or 4 months, every shop up there had them.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, and that's a good example of that. Obviously, you have to have a market for whatever product or service that you are going to offer. Because we're talking fly fishing, we're going to assume that you're kind of concentrated in the fly fishing world. Yeah. And as such, you could do a little bit of research. You'd figure out how big the fly fishing market is. And if you were to say, all right, what is my addressable market for whatever it is that I'm selling? In the case of, say, fly tying, we usually say about half and half, like half the people that fish also tie. So if you're going to do a fly tying product, know that you're already addressing a much smaller market. If you're talking about waders and boots, going to be a lot higher than half, but still not 100% because a lot of people live in areas that don't require waders and boots. Yep. Anyway, so there's a lot of considerations. I think, again, when we're talking step one of any business or anything is research and planning, figuring out all that stuff. And I think probably the biggest mistake that I see people make, and this is the question I always ask when people come to me and say, hey, I've got this great idea. We want to roll with it. And I'll say, okay, what is your end goal here? Do you want this to be a side gig and make a little money to pay for some toys? Or do you want this to be a full-time gig? Is your dream literally to get in the industry and rock it? And I'm really surprised at the number of people that in the back of their mind, they're thinking, well, of course I want this to be my full-time gig. I would love to make this my life, my effort, my work. But I think because people doubt themselves, they say, side gig. And I'm like, well, so what does that even mean? I mean, is a side gig, is it based on that hours of input or is it based on the monetary output?
Yeah.
You know, like, for instance, if you're going to go make fly fishing films, which honestly, this is just me. I don't think it's a viable monetization model. You're going to have to go nuts on YouTube to even make a little bit of money from YouTube.
Yeah.
But anyway, but the point is, if it's going to be a full-time gig and you want it to be, then say that. Be honest. Like, okay, I want this to be a full-time gig, and here's how I'm going to monetize and make it. So if you say, for instance, I want to be a guide, and this is going to be my full-time gig, and you've kind of thought through it, it's like, okay, are you okay with a guide salary? No, are you like a Wall Street financial guy right now today? And if so, will the lifestyle that a guide salary pays you, is that going to be acceptable to you? And that, again, goes back to that side gig versus full-time gig. But when you guys started Tacky, you were like side gig, right?
Totally. It was a side gig thing where we all had jobs. And this was just going to be a side gig. And then it just kind of turned into something bigger, where one of the other guys and myself, we left our current jobs and did Tacky full time. But that was not the goal at the beginning, for sure. Yeah, it just snowballed.
And when Cheech and I started Fly Fish Food, I think originally I had no inclination that it was going to get this big. But luckily I did plan on the possible option that it could grow. So I built stuff that was at least somewhat scalable. But at the same time, I don't think I ever thought this could be a full-time gig. Yeah. And this is like kind of a trap. It's a little bit of catch-22. We're like, if you want it to be a side gig, but you're still going to have to go through all the steps, because you can't create half a product because it's a half a gig, side gig. You're going to have to go full. Yeah. So if that's the case, then just be honest. Say, hey, I want this to be my full-time gig. Well, then treat it like that. Yeah. Even though it means you're working 16 hours a day. And that's also one of the realities we'll talk about later. There's a lot of work. And
it is a lot of work.
So, but I would say decide at the very beginning, do you want this your full-time gig? Doesn't mean it has to become your full-time gig tomorrow, but it means that's what you're working to, because that will certainly help you sculpt the plan to get you to that point. What happened with us is I said, all right, I do want this to be a full-time gig. Here's how I'm going to accomplish it. Here are some milestones that I need to hit. Then I started to kind of graph out the revenue, and here's another thing that people don't realize. The more money you make, guess what? The more costs you're going to incur. So it's not just, oh gosh, my margin's 80%. I've made it. No, because it's not. Cost of sales and that could remain same, but you've got a whole lot of other things going on there. So as you plan, and I guess this is where you could kind of summarize this into a business plan, you need to make sure that you have got all those things at least somewhat nailed down before you take one step in the pool.
Yep.
Because if you don't, then the decisions that you make are not going to be the right ones. Inevitably, you're going to come up to a point where you're like, crap, I should have made this better decision earlier, but I was too afraid to say this is what I wanted it to be, So anyway, at the end of the day, that's step one. Step two, or item number two that I'd say, is identify your sales channel. Now, that seems kind of random, but again, I'm really surprised at the number of people that come, do a product pitch, and I'm like, okay, here's a basic question. Who's going to buy this product? Is this an end consumer going to buy this product? Or is this something where you want to sell into a bunch of fly shops at once and not even have to deal with end consumers? Now, with Tacky, what your strategy, like you mentioned, was a sales channel.
Yeah. So we never sold direct. We just we had distributors. Fulling Mill was one of our distributors. We had them all over the place. But we decided, we made that decision early on that. And right before we sold Tacky, we were thinking about going direct. Mm-hmm. We're like, we got to do something here. But it never happened.
Yeah. Which, again, I think with the number of people that come, here's a product I have. My question is, okay, why would I buy this product when you're competing with me to buy this product or have the consumers go to your website? Yeah. So that's, for me, question number one is, do I compete against you? And if the answer is yes, then I'm much less interested in selling your product.
Yep.
I don't want that competition.
Yep. And that was one of the issues we had to kind of go over, and like, what do we do? And so, yeah, we had a lot of conversations
Yeah.
about that.
And I can think of 2 or 3 right off the top of my head in the last maybe 2 years that we've sent down the path. When I asked them that question, they're like, I hadn't even thought about that. I'm like, well, that's a pretty big question to answer.
Yeah.
And we'd point them down the direction of master distributor kind of thing where you're not selling direct to consumer. The advantage of direct to consumer is you collect your money in the spot. The disadvantage to going into a channel is you have to chase money.
Yep.
Now, you're talking thousands of transactions with direct to consumer versus a few transactions. So it's a give and take there. But
Yeah.
I'd say define your channel, and that's kind of the big thing. Obviously, that's not going to apply when it comes to lodges or, say, guide services or making films on YouTube. But, there are some things that need to be thought about in advance. Now, this is a small one, kind of, but I'm also surprised at the number of people that don't consider this one, is that know what your competition is. Like we're talking before you really get any traction, is look at your competition. So with Tacky, what was your competition?
Yeah, that was just it. We really didn't have all that much competition because our product was so
Yeah, it
different
was so
than
unique.
everyone else out there. So we really didn't have a lot of competition. And then, after a few years, the knockoffs started showing up, and
Yeah.
then that kind of was causing some issues. But yeah, for the first few years, we didn't have any competition,
Yeah.
which was really nice. That's pretty rare to have.
Yeah, that is very rare. And so what I would say is when it comes to competition, if you're, say, you're going to do a product, know what's out there that could be considered similar. Again, it's tough to say, look at your baby and say, that's an ugly baby. But it's good. As a business owner, entrepreneur, you have to be really reflective and say,
Yeah.
am I solving problems? Is this a good thing? Is my competition so far ahead of me that I don't have a chance of catching up?
Yeah, and it's not a bad thing to have competition. I
Right.
mean, you look at your competitor, you want to be better than them. What can you do to be better than them? And that gets your wheels turning, and
Yeah.
you come up with better products that way.
Yeah, and I think that's probably the way I would also look at guide services, outfitters, things that are, in the industry where there's obviously going to be a lot of competition. If you had come to me and said, hey, do you think running or starting a fly shop would be a business that you would consider? I probably would have said no. But along the way, we've kind of picked up some tricks and techniques that have made it so we do things different enough from others
Yeah.
that we can kind of stand out. And we've got some other strategies that go into the secret sauce. But it doesn't matter what it is. You have to be able to offer something that the market likes, and it's either unique enough or better enough from the competition that you're going to succeed. Because
Yeah.
if you're an also ran, like let's say I've got this nice flannel shirt from Sims, would I ever say I'm going to create a flannel shirt company? Heck no. I already gave you my opinion on lifestyle products or clothing. But again, if you say, hey, well, I've got an idea of a type of shirt or something, it's knowing what the competition, you're fighting with the big dogs at that point. Patagonia, Howler,
Yeah.
Sims, Orvis.
Yeah.
You've got a lot of competition that's well set, well funded, huge issue that people don't really think about. They may copy you. Let's say you did get a really good product idea, and I've seen that happen before. Smaller clothing companies get knocked off by the big ones.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
If you're okay with that, I mean, not that you're okay, but you just have to be
To deal with it.
to deal with it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, so enough on that. I would say, and this for me was probably the biggest. In hindsight, I think our biggest advantage is that we planned to scale much larger when we were much smaller. So in other words, from day one, I said, here are our processes. These processes can accommodate logistics of a much larger business, but I need to do them correct day one because we will refine those processes and the systems we use for the processes, talking software mostly. We have to make sure that those processes are supported by the software and that those processes will work whether we're sending out 1 package a day or 1,000 packages a day.
Yeah.
And so for us, that was probably the biggest advantage. And I would say as you go to start a business, if you're going to be one guide, again, think big. If you want to, what about if you become an outfitter? How would you accomplish that? Are you doing things today to set yourself up for that, whatever you want to happen, and scale? So by scaling, meaning you're going to have to hire employees, you're going to have a bigger space. These all have to do with costs mostly. And so you have to be able to balance the costs and the investment that's going to be required from day one and think about that 5-10 years from now and what's that going to look like. It's certainly not going to be the same. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, if it is the same, you're probably doing something wrong. But at the end of the day, you do have to plan for that early on. And I would almost say before your product or whatever it is that you're going to do, before that even hits the market, you kind of have to have that planned.
Yeah, and I think you surround yourself with people with knowledge like yourself. I mean, I've heard you on the phone with people that have ideas, and I've heard you be honest with them, and I think they appreciate that. But yeah, I think it's important to sit down with somebody that's in the industry, knows what they're doing, that's successful, and get their feedback.
And that's a great point, because there are a lot of people, and I'm myself included. I don't sit there and put out offers to do business consulting for people, but I don't have any problem. I think it's kind of a karma thing. What comes around goes around.
Yeah.
So when people have questions and I can provide some feedback, doesn't take me very much time for me to tell you your baby's ugly. Well, Dream Killer's at it again. But yeah, so to some extent, there's a lot of value in leaning on people in the industry. And that can also help you understand how you could scale. Like a guide service with 10 guides, and you're just starting out, you could talk to somebody who's already been there, done that. Now, I would probably talk to somebody in a different part of the country, so you're not, hey, you're going to be my competition, and I'm just going to copy what you're doing. Probably don't want to do that. But
I had a guide come to me and ask me, like, hey, I'm going to start my own guide service. I'm going to, what do I need to do? And I don't think he realized what it involved, because I said, okay, you got to have your gear, like waders, boots, in all sizes, men and women and kids. Yeah. And then I asked him, I said, do you have insurance? He goes, oh, no, I don't need insurance. I'm like,
since when?
I don't understand how that's going to work. But yeah, I think he just, in his mind was, I want to be a guide. I'm going to have my own business, but didn't really have any idea what it involved. Yeah,
and I would say that's a similar theme that I see, is that, granted, people don't know what they don't know. And so that's part of the whole research thing. But as you look to become bigger, it's always good to understand that. So scalability, I had a couple notes down. You need to know your limits when you're starting a business. What can you do? What cannot you do? Or what can't you do?
Yeah.
And build your business around that. Luckily for me, I had done everything from soup to nuts when it comes to these types of things, shipping and receiving and invoices and accounting, because I had done that for companies for years and years.
Yeah.
But I'm really surprised at the number of people that go into this and don't realize, oh, wait, I need a website. And think, oh, now I'm going to have to hire somebody to build a website, which is not true. Or they don't have any experience in accounting. Like, what are common processes and concepts with paying bills and tracking that, and inventory management. There's a lot that goes into inventory management that people just don't know about. So it's tough to be, like the person that knows all that stuff. So when you start something, as part of that scaling plan, is that you need to think, okay, who am I going to have to hire here? Do I have to hire a marketing person? Do I have to hire a designer? Do I have to hire whatever? And so those factor into that business plan.
Yeah. And I think you guys have got it made, because you're kind of, Curtis, you're like, you do everything in that on that side of the business where you don't need to hire out.
Right.
And so you do everything because you've done it all.
Which is good and bad, but yeah.
It's a lot of work.
It's a lot of work.
I know.
But speaking of work, I think, well, actually, let's talk about scaling. One last thing about scaling is that is an exit strategy. So when I sat down, we started a company about 16 years ago, software company. It was a spinoff of another one that I was a part of, and we just ended with 3 of us that were equity partners. And the first question we asked, and I've actually had this question asked by other business owners and entrepreneur types, that like, what style of business do you want this to be? Do you want this to be a lifestyle business or a growth business? And we asked ourselves that question when we started this software company. And in my mind, I'm thinking growth, because I want to make grundles of money. I want to be super successful. And so I want to grow. But on the flip side, I look at that now and I'm like, well, a lifestyle business means one that you don't, maybe you're not having to work crazy hours and it's just more of chill, pays the bills.
Yep.
And then as an exit strategy, you would sell it. Whereas a growth strategy, you would define your exit as building up to a $10 million company and then selling it. So what I'm saying is that you need to define how you're going to get out of this business. And is there going to be a buyer? Or do you even want to sell it? Is it just going to be a salary creator and then you just turn out the lights and walk away?
Yeah.
Mic drop, basically.
There you go.
And then you had mentioned with Tacky, you guys kind of knew
Yeah,
a little bit of an exit strategy.
Yeah, we sat down early on and said, hey, we're going to run this company for 5 or 6 years, and then we'll see where we're at then.
Yeah.
You know, if we get offers, we'll entertain offers. And so by year 3, we had a couple of offers. Some companies wanted to acquire us, and we weren't ready for it. And so, yeah, in 2019, another company came to us. We were ready, and that's how it happened. That was like right at the 5-6 year mark. So
Yeah. And which then leads us into the final topic, and this is the intangible. Number one, though, I would say on my list is just to work your butt off. Like, there's no replacement for that. I would say, as I've looked to a lot of different people and businesses, and the common thread isn't necessarily skill at running a business, because there's a lot of people that at a very basic level or even a sophisticated level know how to run a business. Honestly, it's not that difficult.
Yeah.
What it does, though, take is consistency and hard work. And fortunately, for a lot of people that are good at that, that's the differentiator. Like, if you can buckle down and know that you're going to be working 16 hours a day for as long as you can take it, and sometimes longer, to build a business, and you problem solve, and you're always addressing issues and tweaking and becoming better. It's just a process, ongoing process. Then that has a much higher chance of being successful than somebody just randomly lucking into something. I don't think there really is a luck into something. It's a lot of hard work. And you know, like when you were doing 2 jobs.
Well, I was just thinking, when we first started Tacky, we didn't have any employees. We didn't have enough money to hire employees. So I'd guide all day, and then my day ended at 6 o'clock, and our warehouse was here in American Fork. Well, the lodge is 2.5 hours away.
Yeah.
So I get done guiding, drive all the way home. I'd pull an all-nighter, go into the office, do the quality control and all the boxes, organize and all that. I mean, we all did that. So we all had our normal jobs. But yeah, there were several nights we pulled all-nighters.
Yeah.
But it's a lot of work.
I would say, and here's the other kicker, even if this is a side gig, people, I think, when they start businesses, start to take money too soon, because they're like, oh, I'm making money, pulling it back in. You can, if you're going to do this right, you probably should look at not taking a dime for a number of years.
Yep, exactly.
Because every piece of money you take out to pay yourself to go buy a new fly rod or whatever, could be diapers for the kid. Whatever you take out of that business that's an opportunity cost of potential growth that you've sacrificed.
Yep.
Now, that's obviously part of a business, is that you've got to be able to pay yourself at some point down the road. But I think people kind of pillage their own company before they even get that momentum.
I agree, 100%. Yeah, I mean, I think we went, even though cash flow was starting a little after a year or whatever. Yeah, we didn't take salaries until 3 years in.
Yeah.
So.
And we were kind of the same way. We started to do little stipends for things that were business related.
Yeah.
But we did not pay ourselves for years, and that's not uncommon. As I've been working with a lot of different businesses, it's a common thread. So again, if whatever it is that you're thinking about doing, whether it's making YouTube videos or opening a fly shop or having a new product, you need to know, with very few exceptions, there's going to be a whole lot of work before you see the benefit.
Yep.
And that's where most people fail, is that they haven't planned it out to think, oh crap, I really need to work. I don't want to work 2 jobs. And so then they quit. Or, they realize, hey, it isn't fun working 2 jobs. And so how much is that worth? A side gig, once you start getting into that, the side gig is less attractive.
Yeah.
Because it's like, oh man. And here's the thing for us, like if you're doing, let's say you're going to come up with a product. When you come to me and that's your only product and you want me to onboard as a vendor, onboard you, I've got to look at that and say, is there a track record? Because if I'm going to invest my time and energy into bringing your products into our mix, I need to be able to hope that you're around for 2 or 3 years or longer. But what I often see, and this happens a number of times, where somebody's going to come with this little product and it's cool and we'll take a chance on them, we'll bring it in. And then, a year later, I'll put in another order and like, I'm kind of done with this. Like, okay.
It happens
and so
a lot.
I've been burned by that a few times. So I'm just telling you, if you do come to me, that's one of my questions is this a full-time gig or a side gig? If it's a side hustle, I'm out. For that reason, I'm out.
Shark Tank.
Maybe we should start Shark Tank fly fishing. That would be so fun.
That's actually a good idea.
We're taking applications. Send them my way. Curtis at flyfishfood.com. Anyway, I hope this has been helpful. We're just kind of shooting the breeze here, but these are real things, and anybody that wants to get into the fly fishing world, it's a good thing to be in. It's not the biggest industry, but for those that work hard, work smart, there are opportunities. You just have to have to consider it. So these 5 things I think are very helpful.
Yeah.
Hit us up with any comments, shoot us a message. Again, I just gave you my email, curtis@flyfishfood.com. I am more than happy to tell you your baby is ugly. Check us out, though, at flyfishfood.com. Check out our other videos. They're less nerdy than this, but still, it's good stuff. Thank you, Spencer, for being here. Because it's during his time here, and he works here, just like me. And we just happen to be in the studio filming this thing for you. So that is it.
See ya.
Later.